Recently, I was wandering around the internet when I came across a couple of articles, a story about how Facebook had suspended the account of a data firm that had been involved in helping a certain politician's campaign by harvesting the profiles of about 50 million of its users, of Facebook's users. There were a variety of different responses. Some people were like, you should delete Facebook. Some people were saying, serves you right. Why you have these accounts and why are you using them when you know that that's what they're doing with your data? And then some people were saying, we need more regulation of these companies, things like that. And then some people were a bit more skeptical and they were like, well, is this another political ploy? Why are you telling us all about this now? Is it because elections are coming up soon? Or is this another way of people trying to manipulate others? So even though there were a variety of different responses, what I noticed about it was that everybody cared. And it was a big concern that privacy was being robbed. And so that made me think, wow, this really, really relates to this project and channel that I'm doing. So maybe I should make a video about it. And so this is what this is. I'm going to go on a little minor adventure of the thoughts that came up while I was thinking about privacy. So privacy to me is the ability to choose what information I would like to share about myself. I thought I shouldn't just go with my own definition, but go and look at what the standard definition is. According to Wikipedia, privacy is the ability of an individual or group to seclude themselves or information about themselves and thereby express themselves selectively. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, they say that privacy is the quality or state of being apart from company or observation, seclusion, or solitude. So I wanted to start from the most private state that we have and then see how that changes as we extend our interaction with the world out further. So the most private area that anybody has is in between their ears. And I think it goes a little deeper than that because there's also the unconscious and the subconscious, and that's the part even deeper within ourselves that maybe we're not even sure is there because we don't understand it fully. So that's actually closed off from us. And the part that is most open to us is not even the full aspect of ourselves. For most of us, maybe there's some people who know themselves very, very well, more than me, I suppose. And then there's the family, maybe, or someone who's close to you, a very close friend, or a lover, or someone like that. And then you can extend that. Your interaction with people radiates outwards from those people. And then maybe there's a community like your school or workplace or people you go to church with, or some kind of social activity that you participate in regularly. And then I think there is somewhere else, like say you go to the park and you're just interacting with the outside world, that maybe they're part of your country or your culture. And then I think there is the internet, which you can use to interact with your close people, but you would have to block it off some more because it's actually a way for you to interact with pretty much everyone that we know on Earth if they have internet access. So my point is that there are these different spheres that start off with what's in our heads and then what's a little bit outside and then what's even further out. And I would say that you have varying degrees of trust that you place within those particular areas. Because even for the person who is closest to you in the whole wide world, even inside your own brain sometimes you will shut things off. So remember I said that there was unconscious. But speaking about someone who is really close to you, you might selectively decide which part of yourself to show. And there are different reasons why you might want to do that if you go a little further out. Maybe for an acquaintance of yours, you don't know what their true intentions are because they might want to manipulate you or hurt you in some way, or maybe you don't want them to know because you're a really shy person. So you will close certain aspects of yourself off, and you do that selectively. And that changes depending on which sphere you're in. That's the point I'm trying to make. I think at the beginning I mentioned that privacy was being robbed. And I want to focus on the word rob because it came up very quickly when I started thinking about privacy. If someone is robbing something from you, that means that you own it. And that is what it's really about. It's about the fact that your thoughts and expressions that you put out in the world originate and emanate from you as an individual. And so you might want to decide where you want to put it. And maybe you will use someone else's medium to do it, but it's still coming from you. And that's why there are privacy laws that are put in place to protect you. Because even though you're using someone else's property, you're only using it as a channel for a very specific purpose. So once it falls outside of that purpose, then there's a violation of your property rights over yourself. And that is where most human rights come from. It starts with the right of self-ownership, and everything else kind of goes from there. Something else I want to mention is that you might not just want to have privacy in order to protect yourself from someone. You might also be trying to protect someone else from something. For example, a small child. Maybe think about parental locks or controls on the television. There are things that you know might harm someone in some way if they see them. So it doesn't just have to be about protection of yourself. It could be protection of someone else. And then furthermore, it doesn't have to be about protection at all and fair. It could just be about creation and creating yourself. Because the way I see the world is we're all sort of art in motion. What I mean by that is that we're all creating ourselves. So it might not be that you fear someone seeing something, but it might just be that you wish to present yourself and be perceived in a certain way. So if someone takes that ability away from you, they are essentially meddling with how you choose to express yourself into the world. In the Facebook example that I was talking about, I think that different people have varying levels of comfort. So some people were like, oh, it's not a big deal or I don't mind, but for someone else, it is a big deal. And as we're beginning to use more and more technology, that becomes more complex. And because it's more complex, we need people who are specialized in those things to manage them for us. So they're providing a service to us. But it can't just be one level of privacy that everybody's comfortable with. Jane and I have different comfort levels. So it would be best to have something that suits each of us by being flexible. So I can choose to do this and Jane can choose to do that. And right now we don't really have that. We kind of have it, like you can change your privacy settings a little bit, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really work that way because somebody like the government, for example, can come in and interfere even if when you choose to use a certain medium to communicate, you have an agreement with the person or company whose platform or technology you are using, but somebody else can come in and say, I don't have any respect for that. So I'm talking about the agreement versus the technology. And even if there's an agreement, a contractual legal agreement, if the technology can bypass that agreement, then in effect that agreement isn't really there. So that was me thinking about the concept of privacy in an abstract way, and I wanted to get more into the legal definition and modern day application of privacy laws. So I tried to think to myself, I also tried to look a bit about when did privacy laws come into effect. I couldn't really find that. I could find a lot of information specifically on the United States and the general kinds of information that privacy law protects, which I'm going to talk about. But I don't know when it started. I do know, due to that explanation I was just giving earlier, that it's obviously a very fundamental human right, but different countries have different ideas about what should and should not be protected. Privacy laws protect different kind of information, and they're concerned with the medium that you use to communicate, and then also the storage of your personal information. So some of that kind of information would be medical information. For example, when you go to the doctor, you are deciding to share some information with the doctor, but you're only deciding to share it in the context of helping you get well. So there are laws that protect the doctor or someone else, bear in mind the technology might defeat this, from using that information for a different purpose. There's also financial privacy laws, and again, you are using someone else's service, such as a bank, to store your information, but you only gave it to them for one very specific purpose. And again, if the technology doesn't protect that fully, then that can be defeated, as well as the government can also interfere even though you have an agreement with the bank. There are also laws about protecting one's privacy in their home. And that one makes sense if you just think about the home as an extension of you. So you are basically pushing the boundary of where your personal space is out a little bit further and saying what's in here is still mine, just as, for example, in your head. And then there are also online privacy laws, which are more recent and I think really tie into communication, privacy laws that are about communication, because those have expanded as time went on because our communication has expanded. So I think it started out with, say, mail, and then things like the telegram, and then the internet. And this is quite fascinating to me because I can remember, and I'm sure many other people can remember, I'm a millennial, when I was in preschool and I had to go to the principal's office to get the principal to use her landline to call my parents to come and pick me up after school. All of a sudden, one day, there is MSN Messenger, and I have a Nokia brick phone, and then I have my own laptop, and then I'm just able to communicate in a way that I couldn't before. And now I can be doing this and talking to people, which is quite interesting again because I am using a medium, which is the issue. It's the transmission of my information, that is my voice, how I look, but it belongs to me. But I'm using somebody else's medium in order to interact. And when I do that, I have a certain degree of trust that, I don't know, people won't like cut a slice of me talking somewhere and put it in another context and then make up some story about me. So that's the manipulation of my data towards an end that I never intended. And I think that's really what privacy laws are trying to protect. And I really want to tie this into very current events, such as in the United States, there's a Foreign Intelligence Survey Act, and what people think about, I won't get into the details, and think about the NSA, and then think about countries that have authoritarian regimes that tell them what they can and cannot do and basically monitor them to see their activities. And if you're being monitored, you're being manipulated. Once you're being monitored, you do not act in the same way. So my point here is that our understanding of privacy has shifted as our technology has shifted, because the way in which we share our personal information becomes more complex over time, and the laws have to expand to become just as complex and work with them. So the thing is that even though you have these laws that are put in place to protect our human right of privacy, it requires trust, as I was saying. Even if the company you are working with or the people you are associated with are good people, there can just be human error, and that would lead to something like a data breach. I think there was some company, I think it was Target, but I could be wrong. All their credit cards, the customer's credit card information was stolen. And so I don't know, I don't think Target intended to do that, but we're all relying on the same technology. And so because someone can build it, somebody else might know how to break it apart, because we all share our information about how to make our systems work. The real solution would be to create a system that is trustless. And that, I think, is the next advancement for humans when it comes to our relationship with privacy. And privacy and trust are very closely intertwined. So there are technologies nowadays that are emerging that allow us to interact in all those different spheres, even to the furthest degree out there with people you don't know from Adam, but without requiring trust, because the technology or the medium that you are communicating across already has the inherent security built into it. And I think that is absolutely transformative in a way I don't really think I can express how exciting it is, because it's too abstract for me, but my logical mind does grasp that that means a lot. There are so many things that could be affected. Just think about somebody who is fighting against their government. The government can cut off their funding, for example, which is something that we see happening today. And I'm not trying to pick any sides, I'm just saying it's not equal. And then also think about just trading and commerce. There's much higher trade in communities that know that when I say I'm going to pay you something, you're going to pay me. When you say you're going to pay me something, you are actually going to pay me that money, and there is less fraud, and it's easier for people to trade and have wealth go back and forth depending on who's producing because of that. And that's a lot harder where there isn't trust between people. And our world is becoming increasingly globalized, so our technology should expand to help with that. So to conclude, privacy has always mattered, but it matters even more in a different way. I started off by saying that I was wandering around the internet, and I said that because even though it's not physical space and reality, as in right here where I can touch it and smell, etc., it's still me wandering around, just using a different medium. So our technologies have to expand to still allow us our human rights. Privacy is a huge part of our social experience and how we interact with the world. The way we interact with the world is becoming even more complex, and so the technologies that we use have to match. The best scenario is to have a trustless system where all those people who were given different responses, for example, to what happened with Facebook, are able to decide how much they want to share. I, for one, am very excited to see how we navigate these new spaces that we are creating and figure out how to communicate while still protecting our privacy.